In a quiet neighborhood just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, lived Rachel Turner, a 34-year-old woman known for her kindness, patience, and soft voice that could calm anyone in distress. She had been married to Ethan Turner for 8 years, a thoughtful, hard-working man who owned a small home repair business. Their life together had always seemed stable from the outside. They had a cozy home, 2 golden retrievers, and a little garden that Rachel loved to tend every morning. Yet, behind the smiles and Sunday brunches, something had started to change in their marriage. It wasn't about love, that was still there, though quietly fading under the layers of routine and unspoken frustration. It was about distance, not physical, but emotional. The growing distance. Over the last year, Ethan had been spending more hours at work, often coming home late. Rachel, who worked from home as a freelance writer, found herself alone for most of the day. She tried to fill the silence with music, baking, and reading, but the quiet had grown heavier. Every evening, she would wait for Ethan's car lights to flash across the driveway. Sometimes they ate dinner together, but most nights, he'd eat quickly and disappear into the garage to finish some work. At first, Rachel told herself it was normal, men get busy, work gets demanding. But over time, she couldn't ignore the ache that came from feeling unseen. She missed the way he used to ask about her day. The way he used to listen, really listen, when she spoke about her writing or dreams. One Thursday night, after eating alone again, she wrote in her journal. Greater than, we share the same roof but not the same life anymore. The unexpected request. It was a quiet Friday evening when Ethan came home earlier than usual. He looked tired, but there was something different in his eyes, a kind of heaviness mixed with nervous energy. "Hey," he said softly, placing his bag down. Rachel, surprised to see him home before 8 p.m., smiled faintly. "Hey yourself. You're home early. Everything okay?" He nodded and sat down on the couch. After a long silence, he took a deep breath. "Rachel," he began, "I need to ask you something important." Her heart raced a little. His tone was serious, not angry, but sincere. "Of course," she said. "What is it?" He hesitated, then looked directly into her eyes. "I want us to start over," he said. "Completely." Rachel blinked, confused. "Start over? What do you mean?" I want us to rebuild what we had. From scratch. I feel like I've lost you, and maybe you've lost me too. I've been so caught up in work that I forgot how to be a husband. I don't want us to just live together anymore. I want us to feel together again." The room fell silent. Rachel felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest, part relief, part disbelief. She had prayed for this, not the exact words, but for something to change. For him to notice. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought you didn't see how distant we've become." "I saw it," he admitted quietly. "I just didn't know how to fix it. Until last night. The night that changed everything." Ethan explained that the night before, he had stayed late at a client's house. The man was older, around 60, and had been married for nearly 35 years. When Ethan mentioned that his wife didn't seem to talk much anymore, the man had smiled sadly and said something that stuck with him. "Greater than, a marriage doesn't fall apart in a single fight. It dies quietly, from the moments when we stop choosing each other." Those words, Ethan said, kept him awake all night. He realized he hadn't chosen Rachel in a long time, not consciously, not emotionally. So, his unexpected request wasn't for forgiveness, or space, or anything dramatic. It was for a second chance. "I want to start fresh," he said. "No blaming the past. Just one promise, that we'll both try again, as if this is our first year of marriage." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "That's all I ever wanted," she said softly. "A new beginning." The next morning, Ethan surprised her again. He had made breakfast. Pancakes, slightly burnt on the edges, and orange juice. They sat together, laughing awkwardly like two people on a first date. That weekend, they drove to Asheville, a small mountain town they had visited during their honeymoon. They revisited the same coffee shop, the same hiking trail, the same cozy inn with the wooden swing outside. Rachel noticed something she hadn't seen in years. Ethan was listening again. Really listening. They talked about everything, childhood memories, fears, goals. She told him how lonely she had felt. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself, he just held her hand. Rebuilding with honesty. Over the next few weeks, they started doing small things together again. Cooking dinner instead of ordering takeout. Reading the same book and discussing it before bed. Leaving handwritten notes for each other around the house. Rachel started writing again, not for clients, but for herself. She wrote stories inspired by their journey, stories of love rediscovered in quiet moments. Ethan would read them and smile, sometimes tearing up. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, he turned to her and said, "You know what I realized? Love isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about being brave enough to rebuild after them." She rested her head on his shoulder. "And rebuilding together," she added. The test of change. A few months later, life tested their new beginning. Ethan's business hit a rough patch, and money became tight. In the past, this would have led to tension and arguments. But this time, they faced it differently. Rachel offered to take on more writing projects. Ethan opened up about his stress instead of shutting down. They reminded each other of the promise they had made that night, to keep choosing each other, even when things got hard. One evening, as they sat in their small living room, surrounded by bills and half-empty coffee cups, Ethan took Rachel's hand and said, "You know what's strange? Even with all this chaos, I feel happier than I have in years." Rachel smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Me too." The letter. On the 9th wedding anniversary, Ethan gave Rachel a letter. It read, "Greater than, Rachel. I'll never forget the night I asked you to start over. That request wasn't just a question, it was a promise to never take you for granted again. You've shown me that love isn't something we find once, it's something we choose every single day. Thank you for choosing me again. Ethan." Rachel folded the letter carefully and placed it in her journal, right next to the page where she had once written, "We share the same roof but not the same life anymore."